All right, thanks for tuning in. This is Matt Mayoka of NBC Sports Bay Area. As you all know, coming off that very disappointing loss to the LA Rams in week three, the 49ers are now 1-2, and there's a lot that's gone wrong. And it's been a number of things: players, coaching, uh, injuries, you name it, it's gone wrong for the 49ers through these first three games, other than, of course, their very impressive opening week victory over the New York Jets, where initially I thought, wow, all those concerns I had about the 49ers, all those things that I thought might kind of show up as far as the weird off season, the disjointed training camp, everything else, all the off field stuff, the on field stuff. I thought that that would catch up to them and it would show once the season started. But no, the 49ers played very well in that first game. But then the next two games, meltdowns across the board against the Vikings and obviously all the issues they had against the Rams. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at some of the individuals who have simply not performed and the players who could work their way up the depth chart to replace them and provide some upgrades. And so, the number one guy I'd look at is linebacker Devondre Campbell. He's the one who's replacing Dre Greenlaw. He's the guy who has stayed on the field for all three downs when the 49ers are in their base defense. It's been Devondre Campbell out there alongside Fred Warner. So, what the 49ers were trying to do is they wanted to give D Winters a chance and put him in there. Now, remember, D Winters, second year player, he's the guy that Fred Warner at the end of the offseason program anointed as the top player for the 49ers in the offseason program. What does that mean? Well, not much other than it shows that D Winters has earned the respect of his veteran teammates. And that's a big deal. When you earn Fred Warner's respect, you're doing something right. However, Winters, who had gotten off to a good start in training camp, got injured with an ankle injury. He wasn't available early in the season, but you saw on Sunday against the Rams, the 49ers had a plan to get Winters onto the field in place of Devondre Campbell. The problem is on that fake punt, D Winters got injured again. And so he aggravated that injury, wasn't able to finish the game. And now his status going forward is a little bit up in the air. So when Kyle Shanahan was asked specifically about Devondre Campbell and D Winters and what that whole situation is, what Shanahan said was, we want to keep working to get the best guys out there. D had a good camp and he showed that he deserves a chance to push him. He did good on the plays that he got in there, and hopefully he can get healthy and do the same stuff. Okay, so let's look at what Devondre Campbell has been with the 49ers. He was an all-pro player for the one season with the Packers. He kind of fell out of favor with the Packers and ended up getting cut in the offseason. 49ers signed him to a one-year, $5 million contract. Now, through three games, and by the way, before the start of the regular season, I talked to Devondre Campbell about his play and where he feels his strengths are, his weaknesses and all that. And he told me that he thought that he was underutilized in the past in pass coverage. He thought that that was a strength. And he is a long guy. And so theoretically, you'd think he would be good in that area. However, through three games, when he has been targeted, he's given up 14 completions on 16 passes targeted at him for 149 yards and one touchdown. And also he had that 25-yard pass interference penalty that set up the Rams winning touchdown or winning score, is actually a field goal late in that game on Sunday. Now, as you recall, 49ers knew that Dre Greenlaw would be out for half the season. And so that was a big emphasis for them, was to go get a linebacker in free agency who could step in and fill that role in the meantime. And initially they had agreed to terms with Eric Kendricks, formerly of the Vikings. Last year he played for the Chargers with Brandon Staley. And he agreed to terms, but then he changed his mind and signed with the Cowboys. And so I looked over at to see what Eric Kendricks is doing. He's having a pretty good season with the Cowboys. So the 49ers had to readjust. They got Devondre Campbell. And so, they would have taken a hit, obviously, going from Eric Kendricks or going from Dre Greenlaw to Eric Kendricks. they take an even greater hit going from Dre Greenlaw to Eric Kendricks to Devondre Campbell. So keep an eye on that. The other linebacker position has also not fared well. That's Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. The Rams made a point to run a lot of heavy personnel to get the 49ers in their base defense on Sunday. And that wasn't a huge surprise for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were out. Rams weren't real heavy, weren't real deep at the wide receiver position. And also, they wanted to play to the 49ers' weaknesses on defense. And the linebacking position has been a weakness. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles has been the guy who's been out there, and he had to stay on the field quite a bit, hasn't fared well at all. So I'm looking at Curtis Robinson. This is a guy who has done everything the 49ers have asked him to do. He's been in the building for a few years. Might be time to work Curtis Robinson into the mix. So if D. Winters gets healthy soon, and Dre Greenlaw, let's say, is a month or so away from stepping on the field, the 49ers might figure out that their best options at linebacker, along with Fred Warner, would be D. Winters and Curtis Robinson. The other area of concern for the 49ers is their nickel defense. And I thought that this would be a pretty good area. I thought that they were improved, and they probably still are from a year ago because it was a disaster last year. But Isaac Yiadom, a guy that they signed, a veteran, just hasn't been up to par. And when the 49ers go their nickel defense, of course, Diamador Lenore, who starts on the outside, slides inside, covers a slot receiver. 49ers have two of the better corners in the league, in my estimation, with Charvarius Ward and Diamador Lenore. But when they go to three corners, that's where they've struggled. And Yiadom has struggled. He's been targeted 13 times, given up 10 completions for 123 yards, this is according to Pro Football Focus, given up one touchdown, and then also had that 48-yard penalty against Tutu Atwell against the Rams. So it's pretty clear that teams are targeting Isaac Yiadom whenever the 49ers are in their nickel defense. What are the solutions? I think it's Renardo Green or Rock Ya-Sin. My first thought would be Renardo Green, the second-round draft pick. He's shown up. He's done some good things. It might be time for the 49ers to work him into the mix a little bit more and then decide whether they want to go with him full-time or not. But right now, Yiadom has not gotten the job done. So those are some of the spots on defense. And we'll talk about another spot on defense a little bit later, but this is solely about, we'll talk about the Javon Hargrave injury. But right now we're focusing solely on guys who haven't produced and how the 49ers can find upgrades. Another one, obvious one over on offense is wide receiver. Ronnie Bell hasn't gotten the job done, had the two drops on Sunday against the Rams, including the big one that could have put the 49ers or would have put the 49ers into position for what should have been, could have been an easy field goal attempt. So instead of focusing on Jacob Cowing, we'll talk a little bit more about him later, but let's just go with Chris Conley. Chris Conley is a veteran. He was on the practice squad most of last season. He stepped up in the playoffs, made some big catches, played well in the Super Bowl. I think Chris Conley should be that number 3 receiver while Deebo Samuel is out and while Ricky Pearsall remains on the non-football injury list. And Pearsall is someone to keep an eye on because he is working out. He is getting back into shape after the gunshot wound, which is crazy to even talk about. But he has to spend one more game on NFI this coming week. He is ineligible to play against the Patriots, but theoretically, he could be removed from that list for the October 6th game against the Cardinals. And I do think, if he's ready to go, he'll be out there and he would immediately become right now the number 3 receiver with Deebo Samuel out, and then the number 4 receiver when Deebo Samuel gets back. But I'm thinking that Chris Conley deserves more of an opportunity as wide receiver. Ronnie Bell played 30 snaps in that game against the Rams. I think Conley should be out there for most third downs because he's a veteran. Game's not too big for him, and he also contributes on special teams. One fact about Ronnie Bell, 0 snaps on special teams. So he wasn't contributing on offense and wasn't contributing on special teams either. So I think his spot becomes very expendable. Now back to Jacob Cowing. That's somebody that a lot of people have been talking about. They got to get him out there, but it's very clear that in the estimations of Kyle Shanahan, and he should know it's his offense, He's just not ready. And so basically what that tells you is that with the complexities of the 49ers offense, he doesn't quite have it buttoned up as far as what he's doing on specific routes, the adjustments that should be made, and all the things that come along with that. But Shanahan said he is working to get out there. He's trying to get more comfortable with the offense and to earn a role. He gets closer and closer each week, but he's still not there. So that tells you right there why Cowing is not out there. Coaches, quarterbacks, everybody needs to know where a receiver is going to be, or that he's going to be where he's supposed to be. Right now, Jacob Cowing is still feeling his way. But while he's feeling his way and working, trying to become part of the 49ers offense, he still has a uniform on game days as the team's primary punt returner, their only punt returner, with Trent Taylor being kind of the safety net because he's on the practice squad. The other thing is when Deebo Samuel comes back, is Juwan Jennings, it's tough to think of Juwan Jennings as a number 3 wide receiver after what he did. And I know I misspoke yesterday. 11 catches, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns. I know the 49ers have 2 high-priced wide receivers, and really Juwan Jennings, the 49ers are paying him very well for a number 3 receiver as well. But basically, was it $7.5 million, a little bit more than $7.5 million per season. But Juwan Jennings, does he work into the mix more when the 49ers are in their base offense? Brandon Ayuk, obviously, nobody's giving up on Brandon Ayuk. They signed him to the big money contract, but the production hasn't been there yet. Does Juwan Jennings start to get more action, giving Deebo Samuel maybe more rest, giving Brandon Ayuk more rest as the season goes on? I think so. So keep an eye on what the 49ers have in store for Brandon Ayuk when everybody is back, including Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall will provide an upgrade for the 49ers at the number 4 receiver spot, his ability to run routes, get open, and catch the ball. Okay, I don't see any spots on the offensive line where there are upgrades behind the starters. So I think they're safe. They're set there with, has the offensive line played up to their expectations? It hasn't. I don't think it's been horrible. I don't think it's been great. It's probably been middle of the pack in the NFL. But their offense is still putting up yards. And, Brock Purdy, he ranks in the top 10 in just about every statistical category. And he also added some scrambling ability and some playmaking with his legs. Was it 10 carries, 41 yards, but also kind of got banged up in the process, had the MRI, sore back. He's fine. 49ers hope that he'll be out there on Wednesday to practice. And then also another spot where there was a little bit of indecision as the season started was at safety, but I think the 49ers are set there now with Talanoa Hufanga back. And you could tell he was ready to hit some people on Sunday against the Rams. So Hufanga and Brown, I thought they both played pretty well. Okay, now the one spot where a move wasn't going to be made, but an injury necessitates that, and that's a defensive tackle. Javon Hargrave out for the season with an injury, a torn triceps, going to be undergoing surgery. That's a months-long rehabilitation process. And also what it might mean is Javon Hargrave may have played his final game for the 49ers. Next season, his salary jumps to $19.9 million for the 2025 season. And so when you look at it, the 49ers could save $20.7 million if they were to make him a post-June 1 cut. So I would think that $19.9 million is way too much for Javon Hargrave for next season. So, his future is certainly not only in question, but I'd say in doubt. So what do the 49ers do without Hargrave on the field? Number 1, turn to Jordan Elliott. He's a big guy, 6'4", 303 pounds, and he has a lot of starting experience. He started 31 games over the past 2 seasons with the Cleveland Browns. And remember, the Browns have a very good defense. The 49ers signed him, I think, pretty good contract in the offseason, 2-year, $7 million contract. So look for Jordan Elliott to line up alongside Malik Collins in the 49ers base defense. And then the question becomes, what do they do in nickel situations, in pass rush situations? Hargrave had a sack against the Rams. He had 8 pressures on the season. He's a guy who had 7 sacks for the 49ers last year. So that does leave a void in the middle of the 49ers defensive line in pass rush situations. Look for Yetur Gross-Matos to step in and play a little bit more inside in those nickel situations. Another thing with Yetur Gross-Matos, Leonard Floyd has not gotten off to a good start. Does he maybe see more action in the base defense at defensive end? We shall see. But with Gross Matos in there, the 49ers also expect Clea Davis, who had surgery in the offseason, not in the offseason, after the first game of the preseason against Tennessee. He had some structural damage. He had a really good game in that preseason opener, but had surgery. 49ers expect him back soon. Probably not this week, but as early as next week, he could be back on the field and part of the defensive line rotation. 49ers can be expected to call up at least 1 or 2 players from the practice squad to help them out on the defensive line to set into that rotation. Sam Okawanu, who's more of an outside guy, but potentially could rush the passer inside of nickel situations. The defensive tackles on the 49ers practice squad who are worthy of consideration for a spot on the 53-man. T.Y. McGill, Alex Barrett, and then undrafted rookie Evan Anderson from Florida Atlantic. So that's how I see it with the 49ers, some of the players who simply aren't performing and some worthy guys behind them on the depth chart who might get their chances. Yeah, I'm getting close to 6,000 subscribers, so let's keep this thing rolling. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for coming here, watching, hitting the like button and commenting, and I'll do my best to respond.